Baroness Claire Fox is here, independent peer and director of the Academy of Ideas. The tactics are all wrong, Claire, aren't they?
Well, one of the tactics. Good morning, Mike, by the way. I'm joining in the outrage of all your listeners and viewers with another story, because actually I don't want anyone to think this government is being lazy, because they're really quite active. And guess what we've discovered? We've found out that there's a secretive disinformation unit at Whitehall.
Right.
And it's actually tracking, it's asking the tech companies to track and report anyone who is sharing concerning narratives, wait for it, concerning narratives on the asylum hotels and the issues of migration. So this whole program will be, listed, no doubt, after having listened to some discussion. But what's really disgusting about this is this National Security and Online Information Team was set up when they were worried about people being recruited by ISIS. And the idea was that they'd find out whether there was foreign interference and people trying to, put up those horrible, grisly beheading videos, if you remember. Anyway, it's aimed at jihadists. And they've now smoothly transformed the focus of who is the enemy to domestic people raising concerning narratives about asylum hotels. So in other words, the enemy is at home as far as this government's concerned, and it will go to any length in order to identify the enemy. And that's the public. I mean, that's what's so disgusting about this. They are actually quite active, the government, but it's just that they've managed to identify that the biggest problem are the protesters, or the people who are worried about safety, undocumented migrants and so on. We're the problem, not the... And guess what? At the meantime, the jihadists, those Islamists who actually do represent a real threat in this country, presumably that unit is not bothering with them because they're no longer a problem.
No, that's absolutely fine. And presumably a concerning narrative would not include the fact that there seems to be more and more of these migrants being charged with crimes, which obviously are alleged at this moment in time, which seem to be to do with children, which seem to be to do with young women. Which seem to be rising every single minute of the day. Because for them, presumably a concerning narrative is somebody like you or me being critical of what's actually happening.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you can see what happened. This all started around the Southport riot. Yeah. And they will say, oh, we're only doing it to protect people. But it's obviously then becomes extended into what are now effectively peaceful protests, which you've already discussed, so I won't repeat all that. But the genuine heartfelt concern by local people about what's happening is now expressing itself, and right as it should do in a democratic society. But I think it is worrying that behind the scenes there are these shadowy bodies that are keeping their eye on us, that kind of surveillance. And we know from the recent acknowledgement of Prevent, Prevent again designed apparently to target terrorism, that one of the flags that can get you known as somebody who might be reported to Prevent is that you are involved in cultural nationalism. And cultural nationalism is where you actually are worried about the impact of undocumented, uncontrolled migration on the society that we live in. And if you express it, and of course that alongside the free speech worries that have arisen from the Online Safety Act, which are now effectively taking down harmful material aimed legitimately at stopping young kids seeing, extreme porn, is now being used to remove and take down legitimate political discussion. So I think there is a national crisis. It's a free speech crisis. Yeah. It's a democratic crisis. And I'm afraid the government are partly responsible for stirring it up, because this is the sort of thing which actually creates the tensions in the first place. It creates a suspicion of the state and of all its institutions, doesn't it? We all start thinking, God, they're spying on us. Right. We're the ones who are asking for help. People are saying, we're worried about what's happening at the hotel down the road. We're worried about what's happening to our kids, all this. And the government's response is, get that secret spying crowd onto them, see what they're posting online, get it removed, write their names down. And that's a very scary place to be
and
in.
make a list, exactly right. And also another thing which has really exercised a lot of people this morning and over the weekend is this story coming out of Nuneaton. Warwickshire Police basically saying that they deliberately took a view that they shouldn't reveal the ethnicity and the nationality of two men who have been accused and charged with the rape of a 12-year-old girl in Nuneaton, right? And they said they defended their position because they say they were following national policy in not sharing the ethnicity or immigration status of people charged with crimes, which clearly is a breach of our human rights as the public, and certainly of the press's right to know who is being arrested and charged with certain offences against people in this country.
Well, it's part of that whole narrative that they're trying to shape, which they actually admitted they were shaping in relation to the Afghan Leak recently, where they said, oh, we can't let people know. We're prepared to completely abandon any democratic principles. We're going to have a super injunction, which means even Parliament doesn't know, because we're frightened that if the public find out about this scheme to bring in all these different Afghan citizens who we've no idea who they are. You know, some of them were obviously helping the soldiers and the British Army, but many of them we don't know who they are.
Well, we know some of them. We know some of them were in the Taliban, apparently.
No, I know. But we don't want the main thing is we don't want the British public to know,
right? Because
we don't trust the British public. So my theme of this conversation with you now is that the government seem as preoccupied by the threat that public disquiet poses as they are about the problem, the genuine problem of national security, which is undocumented young men turning up on our shores. Nobody knows what to do with them. The fast track process, which I agreed with somebody, one of the voice notes, who said, what will happen is the fast track will be that you tick people through more quickly. And what is concerning all of us is that for all the rhetoric that's coming out of the government, like Angela Regal, nobody believes that they're going to tackle this seriously. And yet we, or, you know, not me, but the public in general, are treated as though they are the problem. And that police story is atrocious.
Yeah.
They actually said, don't let the public know, because you know what will happen then. And it's like the public have a right to know,
of course we do,
what's happening in their own society. Of course we do.
But my worry, as I said, is that they're claiming that it's national policy. I.e., it's been handed down. I don't know if it's national policy for the police or national policy handed down by the government or national policy handed down by the CPS. We don't know, but it certainly shouldn't be national policy, should it?
No, and I think that at the moment we are not entirely convinced, any of us, that the police are clear what the law is, and that's because of confusion at the top. And we saw that with that section, what was it, 142 or 40, whatever it was yesterday,
Canary Wharf,
the ban for 28 days. You know, the police officer did say you are not going to be allowed to protest here for 28 days.
Right.
He said this to, by the way, a group of people. Nobody knows how they'll stop those particular protests because they're all masked up, so nobody knows who they are anyway.
Right.
And therefore, it will effectively ban protests outside that hotel, whether they like it or not. They've put the scare tactics on. And then you find out, well, no, the Met puts out a clarifying statement. Well, the clarification needs to be directed at your own police officers.
Yeah.
And what we're not clear about, and I think there's a real serious problem here, which is that the police, and I'm not blaming them necessarily, are going to end up being a discredited force because policing has to be by consent in a democratic society, in a free society. But increasingly, the police are coming out with what people consider to be politicized, irrational, inconsistent views. And as you pointed out about Nuneaton, is that the national policy? We have a right to know. When was that decided? Is that democratically accepted? And if it's the case that it's a national policy, then the government needs to take responsibility for that. We need to know what's happening with the police. Otherwise, people are just going to see the police seemingly acting in a two-tier way. Because one thing, you know, that lots of people pointed out, and they were right to, in relation to that hotel ban of whoever it was, a ban for 28 days, is that for weeks and months, there have been very aggressive, lively, scary demonstrations passing by, for example, Jewish schools, and there have been Palestinian demonstrations calling for the eradication of Israel and so on, passing by synagogues and so on. And when you asked the police to remove them, the police said, oh, right to protest, mate. We defend the right to protest. Yet here we had the distress of some people in the hotel, which was given precedence over anything else in that exclusion order. So I think that all the time you just feel as though this is not a level playing field. And ordinary people's, if they lose faith in the police, in all state institutions, then that's a really problematic place. And I think that the government are not taking this remotely seriously.
And that's what happened in Essex, of course. You know, when we discovered that, you know, the Essex police had decided to escort members of a left-wing sort of trouble group to go to Epping to demonstrate against, again, another very peaceful demonstration by parents and mothers and kids and all of that outside the Bell Hotel. We then find out that the police have been doing it in Aldershot as well, and actually escorting people and using that claim that, you know, they have a right to protest and we'll take them there, even though they're all masked up and we don't know what they're going to do when they get there, and then we'll take them back to the police station afterwards. We then learned in Essex that the police chief in Essex has presided over a regime where at least one person a day is arrested for some kind of hate crime.
I know. The thing about that the escorting them up the hill question is, of course, they've got the right to protest. You know me, I kind of defend even the most heinous people's free speech and their right to protest. I'm a big civil libertarian. I mean, you know, it's equal opportunities as far as these things goes, you know, even of the people I despise. But on the other hand, they don't necessarily have to be protesting right in the middle of where the other protest is. I mean, that's why they were escorting them up. So look after them while they arrived at the right protest site. I mean, if they want to protest, stand where you are, right? If you haven't, you know, protest there. You don't have to be marched into the centre of it. No. That doesn't make any sense from a policing point of view. It's obviously going to stir things up. So I think that I don't want to be completely antagonistic to the police, because I'm not saying that they're not doing a difficult job. The bigger problem is a political one.
Yes.
And that political problem has been created by a government that actually is gaslighting the public. I mean, Angela Eagle should be given the award for irritating the life out of the nation this morning, because she comes on and talks about it all calmly. No, don't worry, we're all fine. We've got this plan with the universities. We're doing this here, we're doing that. And everyone is like screaming at their radios. And by the way, it's not just talk, it's like all radio stations. And I think one of the voice notes made the point that, you know, even the BBC have started to acknowledge that this is a problem, that the migration issue is one of now civil disquiet. And the cabinet released their own minutes, you know, actually saying we might have a summer of discontent because of the migration issue. The problem is that rather than them confronting that by talking to the public like grown-ups and telling them seriously what they're going to do, they basically say, you know, don't you worry your pretty little heads, you know, you go home and have a cup of tea. No need for you to protest, because we've got it all in hand. We've got these measures which nobody believes that they will do. And in the meantime, which is why you originally asked me on, we find out there's a secret unit coming out of Whitehall. Civil servants are now highlighting that the biggest threat in relation to migration at the moment are public raising concerning narratives, as they say, about the asylum hotels issue.
It's absolutely incredible, unbelievable. Great to talk to you. Baroness Claire Fox there, independent peer and director of the Academy of Ideas.